What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph. And guys, here we are, another episode, another month. It is a new month now, the first episode of Guarani Vision for April 2024. And unfortunately, even if it's going to be spring weather or fall weather if you're in Paraguay, we have to be a bit on the downside today because we saw our Paraguayan teams debut in their group stage campaign in the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana, and they were bad. That's to put it lightly. We'll obviously talk about what went wrong, how can they improve, but yeah, I'll go to Fede on this one. I think this week in general for a lot of Paraguayan teams, the fans of these teams, and even some who haven't even qualified, they like to find their way to make fun of those teams of their performances. It's just not been a good week for Paraguayan teams in their Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana start, Fede.
Hi, Roberto. Hi, Ralph. Hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. Like always, like every week, definitely it's not what we wanted to see. 6 games, 6 losses. Now it's not what I was expecting from our Paraguayan teams in Sudamericana, in Libertadores. We definitely got to talk about why this is happening to our teams, why this is happening to the Paraguayan League also. Is it just a bad start? Is it something that's going to keep on happening during the group stage? I'm actually happy that Libertadores started, that Sudamericana started. This is the moment where I kind of feel like the real competition is beginning. You know, you have those pre-phases, you have those phases to try to qualify to the group stage, but this is the real Libertadores. Now you have the big teams, the Giants from Brazil, the Giants from Argentina. We had Racing playing against Luque here in Asunción. We had pretty big games also. Cerro Porteño went to Chile. We have to talk about, obviously, every outcome, every result. We have to talk about why these teams did so bad, and obviously talk about a little bit of other things. Intermedio, the second division, is also starting off this week. This weekend, actually, after a couple of months of waiting for this competition. Also, it's finally happening in April. A lot of football players that were actually in first division are going to get their chance in the second division. That usually happens, and we have a couple of new teams also in Intermedia already dreaming of becoming a first division team for 2025. That's obviously something to mention, something to keep in mind for our Guarani Vision viewers, always trying to give the latest news and trying to keep everybody updated. Roberto, that's what we do here, and I want to know how Ralph is feeling also about this very bad week for our Paraguayan teams.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. I mean, when Libertad lost the first game, they were playing away to Nacional, I thought, wow, that was our best chance of a win, probably. And somewhere somebody's gonna have to save the day. And as the games went on, we got to Thursday night. So last night, Luqueño were the last team. They have a great record at home in Copa Sudamericana, but not in Asunción. They traditionally played in Luque. So then there was another tough task for them, not being in their home stadium, playing against a big team like Racing. And suddenly we got to this crazy situation that we were just talking before this started. Like, I don't know if this has happened before, that you've had 6 Paraguayan teams lose in a single match week. And if it has happened, I feel it would have been a long time ago or very rarely. So it was something that was a bit surprising. Although as we go through and as we dive into this, I guess we'll see, like, each individual game, it was very difficult. I don't know if any Paraguayan team actually went into any of those games being the favorite. So maybe we'll see this even out. Maybe we won't. Maybe this is a sign of trouble ahead, because of course this is a great indicator for when we're talking about the national team. A lot of it starts with your best players. Your best young players have to do well in Libertadores Sudamericana to then move abroad, to then get better. And so this is all like a cycle, right? And a circle. So let's see where we can go from here. But it's been a really poor start in Libertadores Sudamericana.
Well, let's definitely start with one of those games that we saw this week. Let's go all the way to Chile, to Santiago, to be exact, where we had Colo-Colo taking on Cerro Porteño in a game that I think, guys, when you look at it beforehand, and we spoke about it before when the group was announced, that these two were going to fight for that spot with Fluminense, although Fluminense definitely did not get on the right foot, as well as they got a draw against Alianza Lima, a team that traditionally doesn't do well in these type of competitions. It was a 1-1 draw over there in Lima. But looking at the game against Colo-Colo, it was was a gritty affair, and I'll go to Fede on this one first because it was a gritty affair. I think certainly, Manolo really wanted to trust his players to really get on the right foot, especially in his continental debut. That's kind of one of the reasons why he had come in. It was a really interesting side when you look at the setup. Obviously having Cecilio Dominguez, Juan Iturbe, Edu starting up front, and looking back as well. Unfortunately, you couldn't rely on Bruno Valdez, who had to be injured with and looked to be a ligament injury early on. And then it came the goal. Then came the goal from Cepeda. I think it was a really big mistake from the defensive point of view of not being able to close down the Colo-Colo players. I think obviously someone like Enzo Jimenez has gotten a ton of criticism from the Cedro fans after that for not being able to close down, even from Brock as well, whether Brock not being able to put in his effort too. But yeah, I mean, the way the result happened, the way that Cedro were playing as well, it kind of seemed inevitable that Cedro were just not trying to go on the initiative moving forward. And yeah, they were unlucky with the offside goal just minutes beforehand. But certainly looking at it moving forward, there are just some of those players that just were not able to provide on the day when Cedro needed it.
Yeah, it is my first. It was the first test for Manolo in this Libertadores, their new coach. He's been here for just a week, and I know we've been doing this show for several years now, and people that have probably been hearing about Cerro Porteño's history, the way they've done things lately. Yeah, I mean, we've seen this happen so many times, right, guys? I mean, they start off the year with the coach, things don't go well. The Libertadores is coming up. They change the coach. They barely give him time to work. He doesn't really know where he is. He doesn't really know his players. You thought that wasn't going to happen with Manolo because he was working in the club at the club last year. You thought that under Jubero, who is also the manager in this club, also from Spain. I thought he was going to be very close to Manolo in these first weeks, especially to kind of help him out in that sense. And so far, it's been just mistakes after mistakes from him, from the coach. The way he's the strategy, even though a lot of people were saying, hey, Santos playing pretty well against Colo-Colo. They're getting a couple of chances. I mean, what I've seen from this Colo-Colo side all year long, ever since 2024 started, is they're not that good of a team. They're not aiming for the Libertadores, even though, yeah, they hired Vidal, but they don't have that many stars. They're not playing, I don't feel, to their full capacity yet. So I thought it was a team that you could beat, even though you were playing in Santiago. Cerro had the opportunities. Cerro even scored a goal that was taken away from them. And then Colo-Colo scored a very late goal that shouldn't have come. That shouldn't have been a goal because there was a lot of talk about that ball not leaving the field when it was supposed to be still Cerro Porteño fighting for the opportunity to keep that ball. And then the ref gave it back to Colo-Colo, and that's when the play started that ended up with Colo-Colo winning the match. But besides that situation, I mean, going back to Manolo's role and what he's done so far in Cerro Porteño, I mean, was Santiago Arzamendia the captain of this team? That was a shocker to me, to be honest. Seeing Bruno Valdez out there, seeing John Fernandez, the goalkeeper, who has that attitude, who has that personality, but has not become the leader or the captain of this team ever since he came here. So there are locker issues, apparently. I mean, who are the leaders in this team? Who are the people that need to be the face of this team in the field? Also, I think I don't doubt that Arzamendi has been playing in great form. He's probably one of the best players in this team right now. He's trying to look back and trying to get that spot in the national team again, or the call up at least. But the rest of the team is not looking good, guys. I mean, ever since Peralta came back, he's been in that midfield pretty much in every game, but he's not making the difference. We're not seeing the best version from Pachi Carrizo this year at all. I mean, he was one of the best players from Cerro Porteño last year. They re-signed him because of that, because of how good he did last year. And then the striker that probably was the last signing that Cerro Porteño did, Edu. He's been chosen by Manolo also for these last two games to be the starting nine of this team. And he's done very little so far. And he's kind of old also. He's 35, almost 36, I think. And how much can you build around a player like that? I thought it was time to put the young players out there, but one of Manolo's decisions also was, I'm going with the old guys. I'm going with the experienced guys. And that's what he pretty much put in the Libertadores. That's what he pretty much put against Nacional. Also, he was able to pull through with a win, with a late win. Edu was able to score on that one, but it was Aguayo. It was Gabriel Aguayo, a new kid on the block, a youngster that came through. He made the right play because Cecilio and Iturbe are not making the difference either. And those should be the guys that should lead the way also, Rob. So I don't know. So far, I'm not seeing the best from Cerro Porteño, and the competition is here already. And they're not in their best version. So Manolo has a lot of work to do. If not, if the coach doesn't get it right away, you know how it's going to be in Cerro Porteño. That olla is going to be really hot soon.
Yeah, it's a lot of like big changes, I think, in terms of using players that have fallen out of favor, and he's brought them back in and they're not really showing any difference. So you have the example of Enzo Jimenez, a right back who makes the mistake on the goal, but also Cabañas have played there. Victor Cabañas have played there in the Nacional game, if I'm right, or he played just in front, I think. So he had other options there, but he's gone with somebody who's been struggling, and that happened. The same with Brock, the central defender. So it's interesting, by the way, Cerro started that game with 3 Brazilian players. That's quite rare, I think. We don't see that many Brazilians in a single Paraguayan team. But Eduardo Brock, he likes him because he's left-footed, so he wants that left foot, right foot combination at centre back. But we've seen that Brock, he struggled a lot since he signed. He never really secured his place in the team. And again, he's kind of at fault for the goal as well, because he's the one that pushes out to pressure and doesn't win the ball. So there was a couple of those decisions, and then his very defensive setup, right? Because you play with Edu is quite isolated as a striker, because he wanted Iturbe and Cecilio to do some work defensively. And then he played with Morel and Pirista Mota as this like double pivot, who are they're not very mobile players. They're more like, I'm going to sit deep. I'm like an anchor. I'll try and win the ball and then I'll distribute. But they're not people that are going to go and press, like Wilde Vieira, who sat on the bench. So he had that team that I thought, yeah, it was like a sort of slow team and not really set up for counterattack, which is what they ended up playing, because they only had like 30%, 35% possession or something. So there are a few things, yeah, I didn't really see like how he's fitting the pieces he has into the jigsaw. I think I would like to see, let's say, Wilde Vieira has to play if you're going to play or Morel or Pirista Mota. You can't play Pirista Mota and Morel together. It's going to be too static in midfield and too defensive. And especially if you have Edu as your striker, who's not going to come and link up. So I think he has to make a change there. And then it's a question of, right, do you start trusting the younger players who he worked with, like you were saying, when he was there last year? So if Aguayo comes off the bench and plays so well, like, do you give him 30 minutes in this game? Maybe that was an option. So it's yeah, there's a few things I think to work with and change, but it's that problem that there's not much time. There's really not much time for Cerro to figure this out, because the games are going to come thick and fast now, and they're on the back foot because they've lost to their kind of direct rival for that second place. Because I'm sure Fluminense will come good and start winning games very soon.
Yeah, and going into that, Ralph, actually, they do take on Alianza Lima, that's at home as well. You think, yeah, they need to not only win, but win convincingly as well.
Yeah, not only win, I think the setup of the team has to be totally different, as we're just talking about. You have to have Iturbe and Cecilio higher up. If you're gonna stick with Edu, okay, but it has to be much more of that 4-3-3 and a more exciting team. And yeah, I would probably see, I assume we'll drop one of the Mota or Morel, and then you'll have somebody playing a bit higher. Maybe even Pachi Carrizo comes in from the start. And then he's got to decide, yeah, about that defense. Like, how much time do you want to give Brock again? Because this is like his second chance. And how much time do you give Enzo Jimenez before you start playing Cabañas there? Because you have that option right there. So I think they're the big decisions ahead of Alianza Lima.
Big decisions, and he needs to make them right now. I mean, it's good. I understand the new coach. He comes into a new place, and he looks at all these players, and he's looking at the curriculum. He's looking at where they played, everything they've done along their careers, and he's looking and he's saying, okay, I can trust these guys. I mean, they've been through these kind of situations. They're built for these kind of matches, but they're not pulling through right now. And And so after giving them the opportunity, now it's your time to do your work and to do your job, to make those decisions and to make those right changes. I think he went the right way in the sense that you're giving them the opportunities. And now, after they've shown their level, after they've shown that they don't have enough in the Libertadores, now you do need to change it up. Unfortunately, it happens after just 2 games. And obviously, this is not the way Manolo wanted to start, but he's gonna have to be that bad guy in the locker room at certain points. He was the bad guy, I believe, during the game when he saw that Iturbe was not having a great game, and again you can see that Iturbe was kind of frustrated. You know, we've seen this Iturbe ever since he came here. I think I only saw the real Iturbe, the one I want to see in those first 3 games. After that, he's just been frustrated, not being able to make the plays that he wants. I don't know how many goals he scored so far with the Cerro Porteño jersey, but I mean, if he scored more than one, I'd be surprised. Cecilio has probably outshined a little bit more, but still, these players, they need to be the stars of this team, and they need to show up in every single game. And that was something that was a concern of mine at the beginning of the year, just how consistent are these players going to really be. And the Libertadores is here at first game, and they barely showed up, guys. I mean, how many plays did Edu get from Iturbe, from Cecilio? How many plays did they end up looking for a shot at target? I mean, those I think are the big factors for Cerro Porteño to get a couple of scores, right? To start scoring at least. Then you have the issues in defense. Bruno Valdez is a really bad news for Cerro Porteño. He was probably one of the biggest signings this offseason. He was going to be a leader. He was going to be one of the captains of this team. And he's been playing and playing. And I thought, we were going to get a Bruno Valdez that was going to need some rest at a certain point. But no, ever since he came from Boca, he's been playing and playing and been doing really well. So yeah, Manolo has a lot of work, Roberto, and I don't know if he doesn't get a win against Alianza Lima at home. The pressure is going to be on them during the whole match, during the preview also. They're going to have to handle that. I mean, Cerro with Olimpia not playing Libertadores, they know they have to have a great run. They know they have to do something, especially because of the Apertura. The Apertura has really gone away from them. And Cerro needs to focus on the Libertadores. They need to get through this group stage no matter what.
It's all they have. It's all they have. And I think that's something that they need to show in their game against Alianza Lima next week. I think that's going to be one that not only is a must win, but they have to do it convincingly as well to work on all fronts. Another team that also needs a must win, and a team that's kind of really keeping its eye on the Apertura title in comparison to Cerro, is Libertad, who traveled all the way to Uruguay at the Gran Parque Central in Montevideo to take on Nacional, and they were also unconvincingly bad. And 2-0 loss to Nacional. Gavi Baez with 2 assists, a guy who's been playing at Cerro Porteño and in Sudamerica, so he kind of got one back at the old guys over there in Paraguay. And certainly Fede, going into this game, I think Libertad understood their really obligation to go on the forefront, and they were outshined on all fronts. I mean, Nacional were just dominant on every level. Certainly 2 goals I think were enough for them. I thought Antonio Galeano had a really good game in midfield, another Paraguayan who's played his trade against Libertad sometimes. But yeah, from this Libertad side, from what Ariel Galeano has been showing, and now where they have to take on, again, in a similar situation, playing at home against Deportivo Táchira, they know that they cannot make this mistake twice in a row.
Yeah, especially with Ariel Gagnano, right? Their young coach who has that kind of pressure to do really well in the Libertadores. He's still under the shadow of, that great team from last year that was managed by Daniel Garnero. And you compare the teams, and so far, I think that team last year played a lot better. I mean, it was a lot more possession. They were able to manage the games better. And under Ariel Galeano, he's not making the right calls. He puts the subs in a bit late. He did it against Nacional also. He had Elvio Vera, Hugo Martinez come in after 84 minutes. I mean, Libertad has a lot of players, and you need to know how to use them, when to use them. You need to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, because you have those players. You can play different ways. Tactically, you can make those changes, and you were going up against a team that's kind of building up, with Alvaro Recoba. This is a coach, a brand new coach. He's still very young. He took over this team just last year, but he's done really well. He's gotten a couple of good results. So you kind of needed to respect, I believe, Nacional, especially going over there to Uruguay, and Libertad didn't do that, especially right away, right? I mean, Nacional was up on the score just half hour in the game, and it's hard to see Libertad not scoring, especially when you have Roque Santa Cruz, when you have Marcelo Fernandez playing in the attack. But I think also the game against Olimpia, the local match they had, the local league game right before going to Montevideo was probably not good for them. Also, I understand that Libertad is the team that probably everybody's waiting to get through the group stage. But when you have a big game like that one, it can be kind of stressful. It was a very hard game for Libertad. It was probably the hardest game they've had all Apertura. They had many opportunities in the first half. They weren't able to score. Olveira, Olympia's goalkeeper, was the big star of that match. But then in the second half, you kind of saw Libertad that couldn't have the ball, and it was all Olimpia getting their opportunities. So Libertad really had to sweat it out there at their home ground, and I don't think that was what they were waiting for either. Against Olimpia, they thought they were going to get a win and get away from Olimpia, but no, it was just a tie. It was a 0-0. It was not a pretty game either, and I don't think Libertad is living up to their expectations so far. They barely lose. I think this is the first loss in 30 games or something like that. I think the last loss was in November against Tacuari or something like that. This is a team that rarely loses, right? But in Libertadores, it's a totally different game. And every Paraguayan team got a reality check in that situation, Raf. And Libertad was one of them. It was weird to see this Libertad side not score and kind of being outplayed also by Nacional.
Yeah, right. It was their second loss, by the way. Second loss in 30 games. So it's the Tacuari and this one. I mean, yeah, he made those changes. So Galeano makes these changes that are quite surprising for me. Like Roque Santa Cruz starts the game, which I didn't really expect to see. And then he had Lucena playing in the league game, and then he doesn't even Lucena he took, I think, but he doesn't even bring him on in the game. And that's where they seem to struggle a bit with some of the transitions in midfield. And like Roberto pointed out, I mean, Galeano has a really good game down the right-hand side. So again, when you play with Mati Espinosa is a very good attacking left back, but sometimes he struggles a bit when he has to do a lot of defending. And like we're talking about, they're not used to it because they're used to having lots of possession and winning games and being the team on top. So this is something that I don't want to put it all on the coach, because Garnero was struggling with the same thing as well. I think Libertad find sometimes the league so easy, and the way they play is always going to be, let's go all out attacking because we know we can win these games. There's not really away games in the league for Libertad because they don't really have the clásicos. I mean, I know they have rivalries with Guarani and of course Olimpia Cerro, but it's not the same. It's not like when you're going to the Parque Central and you saw like that atmosphere and the players, everybody up for it. The referee was against you because I think they have some cause for, I think it's the second goal, right? When Melgarejo loses the challenge, and I don't know, that could have been given as a foul. Again, these are things they're not used to in the local league, because I think they do have it easy because of how well they built their team and how good their squad is. So it's, how do they respond to adversity? And this is now that first test they failed, and now we're going to have to see how they can react, because on paper, like we say, with that team they have, they should be able to get through this group, and they should be able to beat Nacional, especially at home, which could then even things up. But it was like a poor performance, but also I was a bit surprised with some of the personnel changes, because these weren't just players that had been playing regularly. There were changes made for this game, and it just didn't pay off at all.
So just looking forward to both these two games for Libertad playing against Táchira, and then obviously Cerro Porteño against Alianza Lima. Do they get the result that they need? Rafa, could you on this one? Do they get both wins in this one and restart their Libertadores campaign?
I mean, for Cerro, I'm be more concerned for Cerro. I think Libertad have, like we just said, they have the players, they have the capability. I think they've done fairly well against Táchira. I think they've one draw maybe, but usually they do well. For Cerro, my only worry is that we saw this last year with the Bolivar game. Like for me, this is very similar to Bolivar at home. You have to win. And this is Alianza Lima at home. You have to win. And last year there was that 4-0 kind of capitulation to Bolivar. So I mean, yeah, I'm thinking about. I hope Cerro can do it, but they haven't shown really at any points except for the first two games of the season that they're capable of going out and really winning a game well. So I think we might end up seeing like a quiet, fractious game and maybe even a draw, a 0-0 or a 1-1. But with Libertad, I've got more faith.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I have my faith on Libertad. Also, I do think they're going to be a better team. It is kind of weird to see this rotation, like Rob was saying, after the Olympia game, changing so many players when he wasn't kind of doing that ever since the Apertura started, ever since the year started. So it was kind of weird from Ariel Galeano. I think he's kind of going to go back to that base of players that has been doing well in the local league, but he's going to have to try to find other ways to play better or give more minutes to other players. Also, you need to get the best version from Antonio Barreiro. You need to get Elvio Beta scoring again. You need that super sub, right? You need those players that are coming in to make the difference. It was kind of weird that he threw out there Gustavo Aguilar, Elvio Vieira, Antonio Barreiro, and they barely linked up. They barely had opportunities in front of goal also. And those are players that need to take their opportunities. They're kind of fighting for a spot, but they've totally lost their opportunity to start in this team. So they need to make up in that sense. And I do think Libertad is going to be up to the task. They're going to be up to the challenge, and they're going to kind of show some reaction after what happened against Nacional. If not, it's going to be really weird even to see, their coach, Ariel Galeano. This is something that Libertad doesn't usually do. They never change their coach during the course of a tournament. They always wait for the end and then they change it. And I don't think that's going to happen in Libertad. As for Cerro Porteño, I think it's all on the pressure, guys. I mean, the fans are going to be on top of them, and it's not going to be so much on the coach. It's going to be on the players. Like we said before, everybody's pointing fingers at Enzo Jimenez. This team needs to be more physical. They need to know that they're playing in Libertadores. They need to be more straightforward, and I think they need to get into the Libertadores mode, and not just Cerro Porteño, other teams also in the international stage. But if Cerro Porteño can't do it at home, they're gonna fall behind way so much, Roberto, and it's gonna be really hard for them to climb that mountain after just 2 games. So they need to get this win. And if they don't, I would even say Cerro Porteño needs to forget about the Libertadores, because if you can't beat Alianza Lima, what are you expecting for this year when the Brazilian Giants come in, when the champion rolls up to the country also?
They have to play them after that game as well, by the way, guys. So that's one thing where you have to feel as, at least if you're going to go into that game with some motivation, you might as well get it with the win beforehand. So we'll have to wait and see what happens to those teams. We'll also have to see what happens in the Sudamericana, guys, because obviously adding up to the disappointment of the Paraguayan teams, all four of the Paraguayan teams who participated in the Sudamericana this week also had lost. Nacional lost 3-2 to Argentinos Juniors at home. Paranaense, Sportivo Armeniano lost 4-1 to Atlético Paranaense. Looking at what we saw also with Fortaleza defeating Sportivo Trinidense 2-0. And yesterday, in front of a packed crowd, Ralph, you saw Luqueño lose 2-0 to Racing. And you kind of alluded how maybe if this game was being played at the Feliciano Classes, it would have been different. But that doesn't excuse this performance and also the other performances from all the three Paraguayan teams who, ironically, all played at home.
Yeah. So it was a different. I guess it's very different to our two powerhouses, Libertad and Cerro. They played against traditional big teams away. Then our four Copa Sudamericana teams, who apart from Nacional, the other three have relatively little experience. Well, Ameliana have no experience in international competition. So it was a bit different that although they're at home, they were all basically underdogs, except for maybe Nacional. I don't know. I would have liked to see the betting odds before that game. I certainly didn't expect Trinidense or Ameliana to really get anything from their games. You're facing these Brazilian sides, and you're just not going to be set up for that. And so those results maybe didn't surprise me. And with Luqueño, yes, they have a good coach. They have like an interesting team. Again, it was a shame maybe that we didn't see a couple of players. I think through injury, Diego Fernandez wasn't there, and he's been very exciting, young player. But they just didn't really. I didn't really feel they got going right. And then I think the Racing goal comes about midway through the first half, if I remember correctly. I watched this last night and I'm already forgetting, but they kind of hit them just at the wrong time, and then Luque never really got back into it and didn't really threaten. You didn't really think after the first goal they were going to manage to do anything, and then Roger Martinez scores, I think, right? So they had the two Martinez's score, and that's pretty much game over. With the Nacional game, I was also that one I was maybe more disappointed by, but we have to mention that for Nacional, they changed their coach 24 hours before the game. Not great preparation. So they get rid of Pumpido and they bring in Bernay, who has just been at Cerro, but they do this so close to the game. I don't know when he actually did his first training session, but the announcement is less than 24 hours before the game kicks off. So of course it's a really difficult thing for Nacional, and maybe that explains why they fall behind to 3 goals, and then they get better as the game goes on because Bernay starts to see things and can make some changes. But that was for me though, of maybe of the 4, maybe it was Nacional I was hoping would have the best chance to get something against an Argentinos Juniors that are missing players as well, and so I thought they could have done something. And for Emiliano and Trinidense, we know this is going to be a long road, and it's not easy against these big teams.
Yeah, totally with you, Ralph. I mean, probably the only team that I was actually kind of expecting something out of this, especially because of the rivals, right? In this first week, it was Nacional definitely, but the game got away from them way too fast. And when you saw some reaction from their new coach Bernay, it was in the second half they were able to kind of get closer in the result, but it was just it was far away from them the game itself already. So not good from them, just because what you're seeing lately is a team that's kind of melting down in certain points of the game. It happened before in the Libertadores. That's why they were eliminated there, and now the same thing you're kind of seeing in certain moments of the games. Also in the local league. I mean, they had that chapter against Cerro Porteño. I just mentioned what Cerro did to them on the local league that ended with Pumpido having to leave the job and they had to hire right away a coach, a local coach, because you can't bring somebody from outside. You can't bring somebody new when you have a competition and you have a very tough calendar waiting for you. And that's going to happen with all the Paraguayan teams. I mean, most of the Paraguayan teams are going to play between 7 and 8 games in this April. So you're going to have to find that depth in your roster no matter what. And I do think it's going to be kind of that month for certain players to kind of step up. And we might even see certain injuries happening and having players having to come in and substitute. We talked about what happened with Bruno Valdez in Cerro Porteño's defense. I mean, if he's 100%, he was going to probably play all 4 games in this group stage. And now he's probably going to miss them all. So the coaches are going to have to make their decisions. They're gonna have to make their big changes, and I do think Bernay kind of has to do that job with Nacional also because he has a lot of players in that roster. I don't think Emiliano has more than what they've shown so far. I don't think Trinidense has more than what they've shown so far. So for them, it is just about the experience. It's just about building up and seeing if a player or two can kind of stand out. I mean, Thomas Ryer had his opportunity in the last game, and he was probably somebody that nobody was waiting for to score a big goal, and he did just that. So he kind of had his moment already in the Sudamericana. I do think certain players can have that kind of opportunity to shine, but the teams, they don't look like they're ready to compete, Roberto. And as of right now, after this first week, I'm not feeling good about any of our Paraguayan teams in Sudamericana, especially because we don't have a big team. We don't have any team that has a big budget to really go into the Sudamericana thinking that they can pull through. So for me, after what I've seen this week, my expectations have gone totally down, and these teams need to do something totally different next week. If not, things are just going to go really bad this year for Paraguay in the Sudamericana.
It's been really a bad run for a lot of these teams. And I think it just shows the difference that these Paraguayan teams have had. Fed, I'll go to you on this because there had been some concerns about whether or not this league has been kind of competitive enough in comparison to other leagues. And I think, Paraguay have historically become one of the best teams or leagues, you would say, in Paraguayan football. And that's all done to the success of Olimpia, when Cedro have been consistently in competitions in latter stages, same for Libertad. And now we're seeing like this kind of decline. And my concern is, if this is going to be something that's going to continue on and on, or if what we saw this week is just a one-time thing. I think people have every right to feel concerned, and we can go on another episode regarding of the issues of Paraguayan football. But something like this, where all six of your teams lose, is really bad.
Yeah, we can do a whole episode about this situation, to be honest with you guys, because I think it's a lot of things combined. The other countries doing a better job. We've seen. I was just mentioning to you guys off the air that I think Ecuador is one of those countries that you're seeing that they've worked really well with the youth leagues and how many players that they've been able to come through. And lately, I mean, from Caicedo playing in Chelsea to a lot of other players, right? But especially in Libertadores and Sudamericana, Independiente del Valle, showing the way of uh, how an academy needs to work, how a team needs to build players from the youth leagues and use them in their first team. That's just one example. But then you're seeing other countries like Chile, Peru, barely getting any wins, and I kind of think that we're falling into that category right now. Why? It's kind of hard. I do think it has to do a lot with the rhythm, that the way that we play in the local league has to do with the refs also, just how much they cut the games, how paused they usually are. The games don't have the rhythm, the atmosphere in the stadiums also. We always talk about the situation, how many times are really stadiums packed full in Paraguayan games. I mean, only for the Super Clásico, and that's just 4 times during the year, and it hasn't happened lately. Even in Super Clásicos, we haven't had a packed Defensores del Chaco, a packed Olla Azulgrana, or even when Olimpia play at home, they've even struggled to fill their stadium because football is not that attractive, probably to a lot of people. Probably people have kind of fallen behind in that situation. They kind of gotten away from football also. And then you have just how old certain players are in this league. I mean, you look at the last champion and you look at their base of players, and they have a lot of experienced players. And I don't know if that's what you need to take in the international stage. I don't think it's enough. I do think you kind of need to mix it up. That's why Libertad kind of try to do that lately with certain young players, putting in them the team. But then when you have these kind of games, you don't go with those players. They don't think that those players are ready. Cerro Porteño did the same thing. I was just kind of mentioning that situation. I think you do need to give the opportunities, give more opportunities to young players. That's why we even have this rule that obligates teams to put an under 19 in the field as the game starts. Because if they don't obligate, if they don't make teams do that, they're not gonna put in young players, and that's something that's been happening because presidents want to hire old players. They want to hire these experienced players, and they want to sell quick. I mean, the young players they get out of this country really fast, and we've seen that lately also with the big stars that have pulled through. It's a matter of budget. Also, you're seeing what Brazil, Argentina are doing with their budgets, how much money they handle to get ready for the Libertadores and Sudamericana. So I think it's a little bit of all of these things. There's probably a lot more items, a lot more things to throw in this situation in that bag, Ralph. But as of right now, what can you really do this year for these teams, or what can happen right away for this situation to change? We saw it last year. Teams did not do well in the Libertadores. And after what I saw this week, I'm not expecting much.
Yeah, it's a combination of factors like you mentioned, Fede, and I think, but the one I'd pick up on, which I've really noticed, is the rhythm. Okay, because the game, I think it was in the Nacional, when Nacional were playing with Libertad, I just realized like Libertad were not able to match them in terms of just the intensity of that game. And this is our team that is the best team that's won the treble last year. That that are then unable to do that. And this has been a Paraguayan issue because I remember this is a long time ago now, but the 2011 Copa America, the final against the Uruguayan team against Uruguay, it was the same kind of thing. Suddenly it was like there was a different intensity and Paraguay weren't able to do anything. And then we've seen in many games with Brazilian teams where the first 20 minutes, the Paraguayan side thinks, okay, I think we're still in this match. And then the Brazilian side says, okay, now we're starting. Now we're going to move up a gear. And that's when they fall. So there is something about that. And I don't know if it's the weather, because it's very hot in Paraguay, which makes it harder maybe in terms of physical conditioning, right? When you're doing preseason in 40 degrees. Or maybe it's the pitches and the quality of the pitches. You can't move the ball as quickly because maybe the grass is too long, or there's too much of these sand patches. I don't know what it could be, but there's always been this thing about the rhythm has been hard for players. And I remember I spoke to Roque Santa Cruz when he'd just come back from Europe, and he was playing his first season back with Olimpia. And so we asked him about the differences. And one of the things he said was the same Fede mentioned about the referee cuts the game a lot. The games get cut up a lot. And he said, I don't know if the referee's trying to catch up because they're tired. And so they're calling a foul, or the players get tired. So they foul just to basically take a breather. And so that's also a thing. I think the physical conditioning is something to look at. And just one last point on this, go and take a look, like people who are listening, go and have a look at Claudio Aquino. His physical shape now in Vélez compared to when he's in Paraguay, he's a different man. Like he's just a different person. So the conditioning he's getting in Vélez compared to what he was getting in Cerro is totally different, and it's notable. So there is definitely something there, and I think that fits in with this rhythm idea of when games get very intense and there's a lot of transition. The Paraguayan teams have suffered in these big games.
Yeah, it really is a cause for concern. So we'll see what these Paraguayan teams can do moving forward as we close out another episode. With one last thing, we always have to mention the friendlies that were confirmed during the week, the Paraguay friendlies. Hopefully that they will be played in comparison to what wasn't done against Russia. Paraguay will be taking on Chile in Santiago and then traveling to Panama in Panama City before they kick off their Copa America. I think me and Fede had spoken about this last time, but I wanted Ralph's thoughts on this because I think certainly you're getting rivals that are right at the caliber of the teams you're playing. Chile, obviously, you have that connection with Colombia and Brazil in the group, and then obviously Panama with the connection of Costa Rica. Obviously, both these two teams will be playing in the Copa America as well. And yeah, I mean, it's I think it's a good test to really assess where Paraguay at, but they need to get these games. And honestly, I think experimentation time is over for Dani Canero. They need to find the team that you're going to use at the Copa America.
Yeah, because these games come so close as well to the Copa America is essentially going to be the squad, right? The squad you take to the Copa America will end up doing these friendlies because I think it's just going to be 2 weeks before they start or something. So, but I do think they're nice choices of games. I think playing Chile away is a really good test for Paraguay, and then going to Panama is very similar as you were saying to maybe the Costa Rica kind of level. But also, I think playing the game away is useful. I think because having 2 away games before you go to basically play on neutral ground against everybody is probably a nice way to get the test. And then I would say they're the best friendlies you can get at this short time and looking ahead to the Copa America. So yeah, it's going to be a question I think for Garnero really to be doing his homework from now, seeing what happens with injuries because we just saw Ramon Sosa take a big kick last night and him come off injured. Hopefully that was just precautionary. But it's at the end, especially the European-based players who are key players like Almiron and Enciso. Thankfully, Enciso is just coming back from injury, so hopefully he will be okay. But Almiron has been playing all season, so will that kind of take its toll? And so a lot of it's going to look. I think Garnero's hand is going to be forced in a way with a lot of what happens in the end of the European season as it gets so intense. But yeah, this squad he takes for those 2 friendlies, that's going to be the one that we see at the Copa America. He's got to get it right, especially that striker, right? That's what we're all waiting to see, who's going to be the striker.
I wanted to see Alex. I wanted to see I wanted to see him come through, Alex Arce, right, on this last friendly against Russia that didn't happen. I mean, talk about somebody that probably was thinking about the game all the whole flight, right, heading to Russia and having the opportunity to kick it around with the guys, but just didn't have the opportunity to play after everything that happened for him to be called up after Tony Sanabria had to be let down from that list, and especially because just like Rafa is saying, I mean, certain players are kind of fighting for that spot on the list, right? And I do think Alex Arce is one of them. You have certain strikers lately, Gabriel Avalos, Tony Sanabria, Carlos Gonzalez even has been kind of dropped lately, but he's that's a name that can also maybe be picked up for the for the Copa America. So yeah, my expectation is around that situation, just to see which players Gardner is finally going to pick. He's obviously looking at every single player right now and just seeing how they end the season, right? Especially those players that are playing in Europe, or even Kaku Gamarra, that's also playing very important games. So as of right now, I'm really happy just because of, if you look at the last game that Paraguay played, which is 5 months ago or something like that, and you look at that starting team, most of the players are playing. Most of them are doing really well. I don't think there's a player that's right now that has lost totally the confidence from the coach in midfield, in defense. So as of right now, I think the team is kind of is building up, and I do think that those practices, even though we didn't play against Russia, were good. The team got together. They're gonna have a long time together now with those two friendlies, and then heading into the United States. It's now or never for this team to build up and to come out of the Copa Paraguay as a strong team, Roberto. We have very hard matches coming up after the Copa America for the qualification before the end of the year. And those are the matches that I'm worried about. You need to be a very good team to play against Brazil, to play against teams that are coming up still in this year. And those are games that we need to pick up. This Copa America, yeah, we can aim for the championship, but most importantly, I'm aiming for a team to be built up and for a team to play just as Garnero likes for his team to play: possession and attacking.
That's exactly what they need to do, and that's exactly the way that they have to play when they have to go up for these two games, and of course for the Copa America as well. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens to Paraguay and to these Paraguayan teams in the next coming weeks as we close off another great episode of Guarani Vision. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.